Two brothers, two global empires, one unforgivable betrayal. What if I told you that Adidas and Puma were started by brothers who hated each other so much, their feud literally divided an entire town? Kids couldn't play together, couples couldn't date, people formed gangs based on which shoes they wore. This rivalry was so intense that even in death, the brothers are buried at opposite ends of the same cemetery, still refusing to be near each other. This is the insane true story of how a family business turned into a war that changed sports forever. In 1898, Rudolf Dassler was born into poverty in a tiny German town known for shoemaking. 2 years later came his younger brother, Adolf. Their father worked in a shoe factory, but barely earned enough to survive, so their mother ran a laundry business. Young Rudolf and Adolf became known as the Dassler boys as they delivered clean clothes around town. Everything changed when both brothers were drafted to fight in World War I. By the time they returned, their mother's laundry business had collapsed. Germany's economy was destroyed. The family was desperate. That's when Adolf had an idea. He'd always loved athletics and wanted to follow his father into shoemaking. At the time, athletes didn't have specialized shoes for different sports. Adolf believed that creating spiked running shoes would give athletes a massive competitive advantage. There was just one problem: no money, no materials, and the war had knocked out the town's electricity. But Adolf refused to give up. He scoured old battlefields for materials, using leather strips from helmets and string from broken parachutes. To power his tools without electricity, he attached a leather trimmer to a bicycle wheel and had friends pedal to generate power. His improvised shoes were surprisingly durable and became popular locally. Adolf obsessed over every detail, constantly experimenting with different materials and designs. The business had real potential. That's when Rudolf decided to quit his job and join his brother. Rudolf was charismatic and extroverted, perfect for sales. Adolf was technical and perfectionistic, ideal for manufacturing. Together, they seemed unstoppable. In 1924, they officially founded the Dassler Brothers Sports Shoe Factory. Nobody could have predicted this partnership would eventually tear the family apart and create two global empires worth billions. Rudolf aggressively pitched their shoes to every sports club in Germany. Sales exploded. They moved from their cramped laundry shed into a real factory with proper equipment. Rudolf gave away free pairs to football clubs, knowing that once players experienced the quality, they'd become customers for life. Then Hitler rose to power, and everything changed. The Nazis heavily promoted sports and physical fitness to prepare Germans for war. Demand for athletic shoes skyrocketed, and the Dassler brothers were there to capitalize. Both brothers officially joined the Nazi Party. Rudolf was vocal about his support. Adolf was less public, but heavily involved with the Hitler Youth. Their business massively benefited from the regime. Their biggest breakthrough came in 1936 when Germany hosted the Olympic Games, the first ever televised Olympics. The brothers saw a golden marketing opportunity. If they could get Olympic athletes wearing their shoes, it would be the perfect advertisement. They targeted one athlete in particular: Jesse Owens, an African American who was one of the most popular athletes in the world. Sponsoring Jesse was dangerous. Hitler wanted the Olympics to demonstrate what he believed was Aryan racial superiority. Having a black athlete win would completely contradict Nazi propaganda. But Adolf was determined. He found Jesse Owens at the Olympic Village and convinced him to wear their shoes. Jesse Owens went on to win 4 gold medals at the Berlin Olympics while wearing Dassler shoes. Hitler was furious. But for the brothers, It was incredible publicity. Orders flooded in from around the world. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Behind the scenes, though, the relationship between the brothers was beginning to crack. As the business grew, so did the tension. Rudolf felt the company would be nothing without his sales. Adolf felt it would be nothing without his product design. When World War II broke out, every German business had to contribute to the war effort. The Dassler factory began manufacturing boots and weapons for Nazi soldiers. This shifted power dynamics. Adolf clearly ran manufacturing, and Rudolf grew paranoid that his brother was pushing him out. Making everything worse, the brothers had invested in a property together. They lived in the same house with their wives and children, spending almost every waking moment together. The arguments became constant. One night, Allied bombs dropped on Germany. Adolf and his wife rushed to the basement shelter. Rudolf and his wife were already there. Adolf said, "The bastards are back again." Adolf claimed he meant the Allies dropping bombs. Rudolf was convinced the comment was directed at him and his wife. When they emerged from that basement, the brothers could barely look at each other. Shortly after, Rudolf was called to fight on the front lines while Adolf stayed behind to operate the factory. While at war, Rudolf became convinced that Adolf was trying to steal the entire company. He sent a letter claiming Adolf didn't have the character to lead and demanded his wife represent him. Adolf refused. The hatred intensified. Rudolf reported Adolf to Nazi authorities, claiming he was hoarding leather meant for the war effort. Adolf was briefly arrested and interrogated. After the war ended, Rudolf was imprisoned for a year due to his suspected involvement with the Nazis. He grew bitter that Adolf did nothing to help him. In fact, Rudolf later learned his arrest came from a tip-off. He was convinced Adolf had betrayed him to the Americans. When Rudolf was finally released, Adolf faced his own trial for war profiteering. Rudolf didn't miss his chance to testify against his brother. Eventually, both were cleared, but the damage was done. They were no longer brothers. They were sworn enemies. After months of bitter negotiations, in 1948, they split the company's assets and registered two separate companies, Adidas and Puma. Fueled by pure revenge, they would spend the rest of their lives trying to destroy each other. Adolf combined his nickname Adi with Das from Dassler to create Adidas. Rudolf initially called his company Ruda, but soon changed it to Puma, believing athletes wanted to be fierce like a puma. Dividing one company into two was messy. Employees had to choose sides. Most technical staff went with Adolf. Most sales staff went with Rudolf. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. The small town where both brothers lived was split by a river. Adidas set up on one side, Puma on the other. From that point forward, the town was forever divided. Adidas and Puma quickly became the largest employers on their respective sides. Each developed isolated communities. Kids whose parents worked for Adidas went to one school. Kids whose parents worked for Puma went to another. Dating someone from the other side of town was practically forbidden. Rival gangs formed based on shoes. The town became known as the Town of Bent Necks because people constantly looked down to check what shoes others wore before deciding whether to speak to them. The only person who didn't pick a side was the mayor, who wore one Adidas shoe and one Puma shoe to official events. At first, both brands' shoes looked identical. Then, in 1949, Adolf started painting 3 white stripes on his shoes. People loved the look. Now, Adidas and Puma shoes were instantly distinguishable, and both brothers were determined to dominate Germany. The opportunity came during Germany's first World Cup since the war. Rudolph personally knew the national team's coach and tried to make a deal for the team to wear Puma boots. They couldn't agree on payment. Rudolph assumed the coach would eventually back down. He was wrong. The coach struck a deal with Adolf instead. Germany wore Adidas. Germany wasn't expected to do well, but somehow made it to the final against Hungary, who hadn't lost in 4 years. Then it started raining. Adolf had designed custom boots with screw-in studs at the bottom called adjustable cleats. They gave German players superior grip on wet grass. Hungary's players kept slipping. Germany's players moved perfectly. Germany was down 2 goals, but came back to win in the final minutes. Fans called it a miracle. For the first time since the war, Germans felt proud. And since the team won wearing Adidas, Adolf became a national hero. Demand exploded. Rudolph was devastated. 2 years later, during the Melbourne Olympics, Puma's shipment mysteriously didn't clear customs, but Adidas's did. Rumors swirled that customs officers had been bribed. Rudolph was furious. The revenge-driven feud pushed both brothers to aggressively expand. Both sold shoes abroad, both diversified into shorts, socks, and sneakers. Whatever one did, the other copied. Both enlisted their sons to help. Adolf's son Horst joined Adidas. Rudolph's son Armin joined Puma. A new generation of Dasslers joined the war. Both companies entered a sponsorship race, spending huge amounts wining and dining top athletes. For the 1968 Olympics, Horst and Armin wasted so much money in bidding wars that profits collapsed. Before the 1970 World Cup in Mexico, they made a secret pact. There was one athlete they both desperately wanted, Pelé, the world's most famous footballer. They agreed that neither Adidas nor Puma would sponsor him to avoid another bidding war. So imagine Adidas's shock when they turned on the World Cup quarterfinals to see Pelé wearing Puma shoes. As teams got into position, Pelé asked the referee to stop. He knelt down and tied his shoelaces on camera. For those few seconds, Puma dominated millions of television screens worldwide. Without Adidas knowing, Puma had signed Pelé for over $125,000. Pelé led Brazil to victory, elevating Puma globally and making their boots bestsellers for years. Horst was furious that Armin broke their pact. The feud was back on, stronger than ever. Meanwhile, Adolf and Rudolph were now in their 70s. They still hadn't spoken in years. Even when Rudolph was dying of lung cancer, Adolf refused to see him or attend his funeral. Adolf died a few years later. Both brothers are buried in their town's graveyard, but at opposite ends. Even in death, they remain divided. Without their founders, both companies struggled. Adidas under Horst focused so much on sponsorships they forgot about customers. Puma under Armin focused on expansion, and quality suffered. By 1989, both neared bankruptcy and sold to private investors. Nike had beaten them both. But then came the comebacks. In 1993, Swiss billionaire Robert Louis Dreyfus bought Adidas. He created innovative products like Predator boots, partnered with Beckham and Kobe Bryant, bought Reebok for nearly $4 billion, and collaborated with Kanye West to create Yeezys. Adidas fought back to become one of the world's biggest sports brands. That same year, German executive Jochen Zeitz bought Puma. He entered niche markets like Formula One, signed Usain Bolt, and brought on Rihanna as creative director. He positioned Puma as edgy and rebellious. Puma reclaimed billion-dollar status and became the world's third-largest sports apparel company. In 2009, the feud officially ended with a friendly football match in the brothers' hometown. Adidas and Puma employees played on mixed teams. The two CEOs played together as a symbol of unity. But even today, the town remains divided. By 1989, both neared bankruptcy and sold to private investors. Nike had beaten them both. But then came the comebacks. In 1993, Swiss billionaire Robert Louis Dreyfus bought Adidas. He created innovative products like Predator boots, partnered with Beckham and Kobe Bryant, bought Reebok for nearly $4 billion, and collaborated with Kanye West to create Yeezys. Adidas fought back to become one of the world's biggest sports brands. That same year, German executive Jochen Zeitz bought Puma. He entered niche markets like Formula One, signed Usain Bolt, and brought on Rihanna as creative director. He positioned Puma as edgy and rebellious. Puma reclaimed billion-dollar status and became the world's third-largest sports apparel company. In 2009, the feud officially ended with a friendly football match in the brothers' hometown. Adidas and Puma employees played on mixed teams. The two CEOs played together as a symbol of unity. But even today, the town remains divided. Adidas headquarters on one side of the river, Puma on the other. A permanent reminder of the rivalry that changed sports history forever. Two brothers bound by blood, but driven apart by greed, ambition, and betrayal. You can't help but wonder, if they hadn't spent decades trying to destroy each other, could they have built the world's #1 sports brand? Well, never know, because their hatred created something even more powerful. Two global empires that will forever be linked by the rivalry that started it all.